it is an unintentional Clubhouse join for me because my internet is down. So I'll be audio only for this round. But yeah, let's jump into the icebreaker real quick. So I think for the sake of time, we just wanted to keep it short and sweet. So if you look to the pink post-it at the very top of the Miro board, I just included an example of what mine is. And so if you want to copy paste or grab a post-it from the left-hand side, and then three prompts, and would love to see what your answer is for the third one in particular.
What is the 3 questions again?
It's what is your name and what do you do? And then if you had all the time and money in the world after the pandemic and things, borders start to reopen, no quarantine in another country, where would you go? And I'd also like to open up this time to introduce our fantastic speakers for this workshop. So Emily and Amy, I have worked with on inside project and product development, but I have said enough. I am talking a lot, and I would love for them to open up with what they do and what they love and who they are.
Shall I introduce myself?
Please.
All right. Thanks, Karen, for inviting me. So I'm a product manager at Auvenir, which is a B2B SaaS company that builds financial audit products. And I started my full-time product manager role in November last year, so fairly new. I met Karen through the Side Project Accelerator program, which is super, super awesome. Definitely learned a lot from Karen, the queen of Miro boards. And in my spare time, I do stand-up comedy for a hobby. So, maybe one day you'll see me somewhere online on YouTube telling jokes. All right. In terms of the country I want to visit after post-pandemic, it will be Japan. Yeah.
Oh man, love Japan. It's such a gorgeous place.
I want to go to Japan too. I want to write that.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's do a group trip then.
Yes. Also Super Mario World, and the improv is strong. This one, everyone. Emily, please go on.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I'm a freelance UX researcher and designer. And I met Karen and Amy through a side project. And as Amy mentioned, it's a great program. And that's where we create a lot of great products. And also that's where I began to, kind of addicted to Miro board, because I almost use it during all the design process. So, okay, about my hobby, I like traveling, and I almost went to like 18 countries so far. I wish the number could go up next year. So that's about me, and good to see everyone here.
Great.
Fantastic. And we'll just jump into pro tips right away. But a quick thing, folks, if you haven't already and you're not speaking, please mute your lines. There was a we've heard some fun tidbits in the events, but we want to make sure all the focus is on speakers. So let us know if you have any technical difficulties as well, and then we'll try our best to help you along the way. So moving into pro tips, if we could zoom in a little bit on the grid. Thank you, Natalie. So if you haven't used Miro before, no worries. It's if you use software programs like PowerPoint and basically the Microsoft Office or Google Office tools, the keyboard shortcuts are actually very familiar. You can choose, and Natalie, feel free to let me know if I'm missing anything here. But if you need anything, the shortcuts are in this leopard print chart, and then Control Z, undo, and then going through the various duplications, copy, paste. A lot of general functions you'll see are in this Miro board, along with voting, which is really cool. And one thing we will be using is a timer later on in them as we go to the Crazy Eights exercise. One thing you can also consider is pointer versus pan, which is basically selecting, and you would be making the utilities box to the very left of the screen on your screen your best friend. That is how you can choose to add post-its, for example, text boxes, comments, arrows. It gets very versatile, and you can also customize this utility box by clicking on the ellipses and making sure that you have all you need when you build a Miro board, and try to make it the most productive asynchronous workspace you can, or synchronous. Alrighty, and yeah, please let me know, or let us all know if you have any questions. I think it benefits everyone when it comes to learning about Miro as a platform. If you have any questions, feel free to cut in. This is more of a dialogue and a workshop rather than a straight lecture. So let us dive into how does Miro fit into an accelerator. So I wanted to show a model that product managers and designers typically use. It's called the double diamond feature. So if you go to, yes, exactly, Natalie, thank you. If you go to this little double diamond or rounded diamond diagram, that is a way for us to be grounded in revolve around the user when we're trying to come up with product development. So as you'll see, and I could talk about this for hours because it's so fascinating, and it's a very good structure to have in mind when you're trying to get something out in a sprint, or not just a sprint, but to think it's basically a North Star to keep you going as you push forward in your product journey. So for this particular exercise, I want to emphasize that we'll be in the defined space. So if you go to the first diamond on the left, there's its second half. And so we'll be at the end of that because we've diagnosed a problem here. And Amy and Emily, please let me know if I've missed anything here too. But basically you're diverging at first. You're trying to understand what a problem is, first of all, in this whole section. You're trying to understand who your user is, what their problem is. Is it a significant problem? Is it something that you can actually tackle? And so you start going to define as you start bringing your ideas up to your teammates, and you start thinking about ways you can converge and align to get to an agreed problem, first of all, agreed user segment. But then we're going to get to that end, or basically nearing that point, that end point of the defined cycle towards vision and plan. And so that's where we start thinking of solutions. And then that's when we start jumping into development. So this workshop is purely a simulation around ideation. And so if we move over to the next part of the board, let's go into that problem worksheet that I sent around. It's also on the board if you need it for access, but just for reference, for now we set up this persona, this targets user that we might actually be able to relate with, depending on who you are in the audience. But we're thinking of a character, Anna Gonzalez. We put a face to the name. She's 27 to 28 years old. She's single, and she is hitting the nearly mid-level on the corporate rung. She's a vice president at a male-dominated senior management, where at a hedge fund with basically that's with a boys club, and she's pulling the extra hours, and she does outstanding client-facing work. The thing is, though, is that she's losing to this boys club. She can't really fit in, and she feels like there's not as much guidance for her to advance in her career, even though she really wants to be there and she's really putting in that effort. So thinking about Anna a little bit deeper, what kind of archetype she has, and this is going into product theory, and I'm just going to gloss over this for now, but feel free to take a deeper look. She is what we would call an everyman, or in a more gender neutral term, a citizen. So she is representative of the audience, and she works hard to live simply. She just wants to belong. Unfortunately, in order to get that feeling of belonging or feeling like she's a fit, she sometimes has to diminish herself in a way to compromise for the fact. So jumping into the stats and feedback, I added a lot, as I mentioned earlier, but we just want to focus on several statistics from recent reports through McKinsey, Lean In, S&P, and basically the vibe that, or actually, no, I want to open up the floor to everyone, especially our speakers. What kind of problem are you sensing here before we jump into the actual prompt? And I can give it about 1 or 2 minutes. I know I just laid out a whammy here.
It looks like, based on the stats that you've highlighted here, that the percentage is quite low for women to get promoted to the SVP roles. And maybe this is like a reason, and the C-suite, and maybe this is like a reason why she's kind of feeling not empowered to reach those titles.
Absolutely. And there's definitely an interesting perception issue when it comes to women in the workforce. Unfortunately, I think there is a mental divide culturally. It may not even some studies have shown that there are misconceptions about women having to be the caretakers, having to be the mothers, and work basically the household keepers than anything. So that does play into a part in why there are boys clubs, why there's so many boys clubs, and why it's harder for women, especially if she's working in a boy club, the Annas of the world, how hard it is for her to not only ask for a promotion or talk about getting a promotion. She might even be afraid because there is that cultural misconception that she might be naggy, or she might be whiny, or any negative thing that wouldn't be associated with a man if he tried that. Maybe he would be considered as bold or confident. So it does not play in people like Anna's favor. And there was an interesting experiment. So if you hop on to the page with the second green highlight, there was a swapping sexes scenario that happened quite recently that went viral. There was a man who accidentally signed off his name with his colleagues for an email, but after that, they wanted to do an experiment. They tried switching their signatures for a bit and interacting with their clients, and look what happened with that quote. It took a lot more effort for the woman to even convince her clients that she was legitimate and that she deserved to be there. So not only is it an inequality within, it's also an inequality without. And there's a lot more pressure, especially with the Annas working in mainly a boys club. There's more of a stress to perform, and just a lot of stress and near burnout compared to men, as you'll see in the highlights. So before we start talking about this, going into the prompt, did anyone have any further insights from this? Any concerns, anything to be angry about or frustrated regarding this? You're among friends here. Oh, and one more thing, if you would like to participate over chat, that is also welcome as well, if you're more comfortable with that, whatever is at your comfort level, for sure. So let's just jump into the prompt right now. So instead of a problem statement, we wanted to keep it a little broad when it comes to solutionizing, ideating. And it begs the question, how might we help the Annas of the world receive more equal opportunities to advance in her career? And then there are two hints. Do we want to talk about getting paid for what she's actually worth? Or do we want to help her get the projects, the work opportunities she deserves? And so I just want to step aside for a real quick second before we jump into this exercise. Amy and Emily, do you want to talk about how Miro really helped your product thinking and product development, and just how workshopping together has really helped before we dive into the thick of it?
Yeah. So I personally found Miro a really great tool for any brainstorming activities, which means during the double diamond design thinking process, if Kara, you don't mind scrolling back to the double diamond? Yes. So in the first half of the first diamond and the first half of the second diamond is the diversion thinking process, where you will ideate as many, you will try to expand, and you try to, brainstorm what are the kind of problem, exploring the problem space, and also exploring the solutions. And this is the place where you will need to get together with your team to gather your ideas. And during the exploration phase of the problem discovery, especially for my side projects, for both of my side projects, we use Miro as a way to really do affinity mapping and identify any patterns that we notice within our user interview and user research, and also surveys. And then we group them together, color code them, and identify what are the key biggest user pain points. And that could be potential opportunities for us to come to define the problem statement and come up with solutions for our MVP. And in the execute solution phase, in this first half, we will use Miro to do our brainstorming. This could be Crazy 8, which we'll be doing later today for our ideation process. And also, we sometimes use Miro board for our user flow as well, in order to come up with what is the workflow, what is the UI, what is the user interaction with the app from start to finish throughout their journey. And we also use Miro to do our customer empathy map, customer journey map as well. Like there's so many things to be done within Miro. It's a very powerful tool. And
yeah, I agree with Amy said. We use Miro board for almost everything. And I just want to highlight a little bit about the Crazy 8s. I want to share with you guys how we use Miro board to kind of utilize Crazy 8s in our side project. And we kind of, with anyone, if you are a UX designer or anyone with UX design background, you might be more familiar with Crazy 8s. Usually you're going to draw roughly on the real paper and kind of fold in 8 rectangles and had a set a timer, and I kind of quickly generate any ideas or any concepts. And when we conduct our side project, we kind of adjusted a Crazy 8s to Miro board. So instead of having like a real paper, each one of us had a digital space, like what we will do later, and still had a timer. It's kind of a rush. It's kind of crazy. That's what we called Crazy 8s. And then we quickly just write down any ideas, anything would just come to my mind. So in this phase, the quality is not the most important thing. Instead, it's about the quantity. So I think it's a really a good way for you to have some quick thinking and kind of share some of your subconscious ideas with your team, and you can also invite your even client or any stakeholders to join this session. I think it's fun, and it's also a good way to kind of boost the communication. So that's how I kind of used the Miro board and to do some Crazy 8s and other things. And you guys can kind of feel that in the exercise later.
Yeah, and I have an actual example of what I did, the Crazy 8 I did offline rather than on Miro. So this is within, okay, maybe I should disable my background because it's, so this is the Crazy 8 sketch. Actually, it's Crazy 6. It's 6 because of the time limit, but this is a case study, a part of the case study I did for Amazon as part of my PM course. And basically the purpose of doing the Crazy 8 exercise is for your team to come up with some of the more extreme ideas that normally would not come to your mind, like Emily mentioned, like some of the subconscious ideas, to really, push your limit, generate as many as possible within a short amount of time, because constraint breeds creativity, right? And I personally really like it. And with Miro, it kind of makes the process even more efficient by using sticky notes and, just like brain dumping out all the ideas and solutions.
Absolutely. And as PMs and designers, our minds are a Rolodex of frameworks. We're just shifting back and forth. There's no one size fits all. It's really what we pick, the one that suits whichever situation we're facing best. So that also comes into play with Crazy 8s. We're ideating solutions here. And as Amy was showing, that was a full-fledged design sprint of with creativity. But you don't have to have the wireframes ready on that page when it comes to ideating with a team, especially if you are not as design savvy as I am. But one thing you can definitely do is just typing up ideas on a Post-it. That is also getting you a step closer to what kind of product you're looking to build ultimately with your team. So here's the thing. I think when Emily and I were working together on side project, we had an honor code where we weren't looking at each other's ideas. And of course, some were going to overlap, but I think the best kind of creativity, and studies have proven that brainstorming is most efficient independently, and then you come together for some kind of consensus. So we're going to play around with that. So if you, I will not hold you to it. I will not be peeking, but if you can, try not to look at other folks when they're brainstorming, but come up with 8 ideas based on the feed, refer to that Google Doc and think about what are potential solutions. Even if they're small ones, they don't have to be lofty ones. We're not going to defeat gender discrimination overnight, but there are incremental changes. And especially with the future generation of products, there is hope. There's definitely hope out there. And so if you need a refresher, and we'll set a timer shortly, but if you need a refresher on Crazy Eights, what you do is you come up with 8 ideas, pick, and then you want to just put them on a board or put them on a space somewhere within this worksheet, and then start thinking about what your top, Amy, was it 3 to 5 ideas?
It's top 3.
Top
it's
3?
Top 3.
Okay.
So top 3 from the 8 ideas.
Top 3 from the 8 ideas. There we go.
Yeah. And you share your ideas with the group, and the group will vote together.
Yep. And so the cool thing about this is that it's an exercise in an exercise. So with the Crazy Eights, you're going to come up with your 8 ideas in 8 minutes, or as many as you can. The concept is just drill through as many ideas as you can and pick your top 3, put them out there. We won't have time for everyone to explain why they picked their top 3, but just have that, or you can actually, no, you can explain it in the chat if you wish. Well, there's that option too. And what we're going to do right after that is an affinity map. So as we look at the ideas as a collective, once the timer's up and once the top 3 ideas are put on the space, we're going to figure out what kind of connections can we put into into a group. How can we group these Post-its of ideas together into something that reflects a pattern, something that can light a light bulb and think, okay, there's something going here. That's awesome. And then that's when we vote. That's when we vote on what would be the most feasible idea. And of course, this is a simulation. So it's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge on how this is done on a remote platform that's as great as Miro, but it's also a little nudge, a call to action. It's a gentle call to action, but really excited to start this up with you all. I think, is everyone ready? All righty then. I will be watching on the timer and letting you know what the timing is, but feel free to get at it. Use the Post-its. We'll be using the dots for voting later, but yeah, grab whichever color you choose and let's get started.
I feel like I have a lot of similar ideas, just to keep typing the same thing, similar thing.
Could be different iterations, but they could be similar. That might make work easier with the affinity mapping, Emily.
I agree.
I mean, I think it's always hard to ideate more if you really think about the problem space. I feel like I always keep going back to that lady who's not feeling, great in that working situation, and I can relate to her situation and thinking about the environments that's helping her, not helping her, but and so that was kind of tricky. But if I wanted like the perfect workplace, oh yeah, I'd have like 100 ideas down.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing, Sent. So if folks want to take their top 3 over, let's move them over to the right a little bit closer towards those boxes you see at the very right past.
By the way, you don't have to use your mouse to drag the stickies all the way there. If it's too much work, you can simply cut and paste.
Great point.
Or copy and paste. You can multi-select too. So when you're on Miro, you just need to, control and multi-select. Or you can simply you click on your mouse and drag So you can select multiple stickers at a time, and then you can cut and paste into the right-hand side, and that can hopefully save some time.
Yep, those have saved me so much time in the past. And I think sometimes I use the shift key and then I drag my mouse over. So that also works. But great tips for those who haven't used Miro yet. Alrighty, so if folks have put their top 3 up, I think now's the time where if you see a connection between any of them, they don't have to be strictly be yours. We're gonna give it 5. We're gonna give it about let's give it about 7 minutes to start sorting these into relevant groups. And there are different boxes out there. You can also make a new one. I think they should be unlocked. If not, we can unlock one of them and we can copy and paste. These are just boxes so that you can box certain groups of post-its together and see if they have a common connection. So let us get started with those 7 minutes in affinity mapping. All right, as folks are wrapping up, I want you to think about which particular group. Doesn't have to be a specific idea, but the ideas really do make the groups themselves. Take a dot from the far left-hand side of the whole rectangle of this workspace and start placing it in the group that you find as the most compelling or the most feasible.
What do you mean feasible?
Or I guess the most realistic, unless there are any engineers in the crowd, I think something that seems doable, at least from a product perspective, but if you're trying to empathize, if you had developers. So for example, we can't force companies to include more women in their hiring practices and things like that, but there might be some incremental steps along the way. Or the ones you really like. It's a Friday. I think we deserve that grace for ourselves. You're trying to gain a consensus based on the ideas that you thought of independently and then brought together in front of a group. So when you vote on an idea, maybe people can pick your top 1, top 2, top 3, depending on how your team operates. But when you have one that people solidly focus on, that's the one you're going to pick for whichever sprint or whichever part of the development process that you're in. Because oftentimes in that double diamond, you might be working multiple stages at once. It's not a surefire, one-directional process. So let us see the results. Sorry on my end if oh, there we go. Okay, perfect. All right. And some groups might have ties, so sometimes you'll have to come up with tiebreakers, but that is for another time. So unless I'm mistaken, oh, nope. Oh, we might be having a tie. So transparency and community and support groups. Yep, for sure. Just giving a little read through. If anyone have any feedback or any discoveries or insights that they've picked up on based on how folks have voted and where the ideas have turned towards.
It sounds like there's some overlap between the first 2 groups as well. Like I saw that some of the ideas are like having a committee dedicated to ensuring there's, women is getting equal opportunities in promotion and advancement. That kind of ties into both the community and the transparency aspect.
Absolutely.
And I also felt like some of the community ideas I've already seen it or is being implemented. So I guess some of the training I feel like is missing right now in tech to really promote this equal promotion and career advancement. There's still a lot of like unknowns. So I don't know. I thought that would be like an innovation thing that we could look into.
Yeah, I think this is something in a real project, right? This is where it might be worth diving deeper into the problem space to identify whether there's an underserved needs. For example, like here, we have a lot of solutions surrounding around community. So one of the hypotheses, does that mean there's a greater need for community from women versus like the other solutions? I think this is something worth maybe diving deeper into if it's this like if this is like a real product discovery or user research activity.
100%. And the thing about product is that we have to constantly iterate and validate these assumptions that we're going by based on how we voted and everything. One thing I deliberately left out, or rather didn't include, was the voice of Anna, the voice of people like Anna, because we don't really see that, to be fully honest. I mean, we get insights from surveys because people tend to give more information anonymously in this particular problem. And when I was searching, they don't really have direct quotes from the Annas of the world. Maybe that's because of fear. Maybe that's because they might get punished for saying something out loud. So that is also another assumption to think about when it comes to things like these. The quotes that I did pull from women were more senior. They were either CEOs or exec level positions. So definitely something more to think about as time goes on. But that's why it's so important for product managers and designers, and even beyond that, stakeholders. I would even say engineers deserve to be at the table for that if they want to hear more about why their product or why these ideas make sense and why it's worth the effort to make a feature that resounds with these ideas or resonates. And it's really, we won't know apart from asking the customer often if this is something they need. So thank you everyone for your participation in this exercise. This is definitely it's a very real life problem, and it's a very real life exercise. So as you think about bringing over remote learning to your teams, and especially how COVID, I can speak for Los Angeles. We're getting more of a rollout, and there might be some offices very optimistically coming back in September, November, we'll see. But given that there has been at least a hybridization, if not full remote environment for a lot of people, this is a way for you to align with your teams, no matter where you are, no matter which time zone you are. So that I would stress, given Emily and Amy's points of view and how we've all done Crazy Eights, that it's a very fun exercise. I think this was my favorite in the product development cycle. Amy and Emily, I'm not sure which one was yours, but it was really fun just to get together and just noodle and vote. So with that, any last questions, comments, concerns from audience members? Emily, Amy, Sin, if any last remarks on just the exercise here?
I think another suggestion I will make is when during an actual discovery session, it's important to consider what is the user persona that came up with a certain feedback, especially if we would use Miro to do affinity mapping. Maybe it's worth using color coding, like the different color for each user, to group what are the patterns for that specific persona, because different user persona can have different needs, different preferences, different behavioral patterns. So it's sometimes very important to differentiate that. And that's something my team is doing at work as well, since we are a B2B product with a lot of different user personas.
And for sure, the persona is basically a crystallization of the people you've interviewed, piggybacking off of Amy's point. And so you want to think, you always, as product manager or even designer, you want to think back and think, what would your persona do? Because that persona is the voice of all the voices that you've interviewed or you've gotten feedback from in any particular medium. So definitely think about the wants and desires and what they want to do and why they need this product. How will this product get them from point A to point B and what they need to address to get their needs fulfilled. So very user centric, and the double diamond, I cannot stress enough how important it is. It was huge when I was joining as a product manager, and that was something that Emily and I used as partners in our team. And Amy, I'm sure you use this with your team at Side Project as well.
Yep.
And so yeah, that was it for the workshop. If we can just turn to a quick survey at the very end. Natalie, do you want to run through the last few minutes here?
Yeah, sure. So as you can see, I'm still sharing my screen. We have a little survey here, and we'd love to collect some feedback if you guys have. Just a short little retrospective on just the drag and drop a dot where applies over here. There's 4 different prompts. And then we also have a little retrospective section where we'd love to collect what you thought went well with today's session, how might our events moving forward improve, and then also suggestions for what should come next. So if you have other ideas for topics on future events, we would love to hear from you. And so take some time. We really appreciate some time if you could help us out on that front. And as I mentioned earlier, it's not on the board, I think, but I'm just going to place a couple of stickies. One that has events.miro.com. If you want to check out our other chapters that we have around the world, obviously we're still all virtual thanks to COVID. So you're free to go to any chapter you want, to any event you want. So I would definitely encourage you all to check that out and see what's going on in the community as well. I wanted to leave my email here in case anyone had any questions about the community or how they may get involved or even start a chapter of their own. So that's my contact. And yeah, I will let Jen and Karen close, but I wanted to take some time and thank you all for coming to today's event, spending your Friday afternoon with us. And I hope to see you soon.
Thanks so much, Natalie. And
Thank you.
yeah, thank you for a very productive session. And by the way, this board isn't going anywhere. So if you do want to think of ideas, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, about how to target and first of all, find a team. These are some really good ideas that you have thought up on the incremental changes that we can start implementing in order to get somewhere and basically narrow the gender gap as much as we can with the resources that we have. We do have the technological power. We just need to find the why and the how. So that is it from me. Jenna, how about you?
No, I mean, thank you. This is my first workshop with you all. So I'm just very excited and very thankful. So nice to meet all of you. Thank you again, Amy, Emily, and just everyone joining. And hope you all found it beneficial. And totally, let's continue supporting each other and everybody stay safe and take care.